just a little bit about the Green Leagues. Basically, these workshops are hosted by the Green Leagues. I apologize to the people who've heard this already. But basically, the Green Leagues is here to help community leagues become leaders in energy efficiency and solar in their communities. And we have several ways we're kind of approaching this. Workshops such as this one. Personal assistance, which in relevance to this includes grant writing. So for these types of programs, I am available to help you write the grants in order to make these projects happen. Energy audits, and also connect you to each other, so as well as the experts who can help you with the projects that you're looking to accomplish. And this is a list of acronyms that we're going to touch on today. Hopefully by the time you leave, you'll kind of be semi-familiar with at least one or two of them, hopefully all of them. And our presenters today are myself. I'm the Energy Transition Officer here at the EFCL. So I basically run the Green Leagues program, and I'm presenting just the beginning and intro parts. We have Robin Webb as the Environmental Engagement Coordinator from the City of Edmonton. Mark, who's the manager of the MCCAC, which is another acronym for the Municipal Climate Change Action Center. And David Dodge, who is the chair of Energy Efficiency Alberta and the sustainability director at Evansdale Community League. So for those of you who have come before, I've kind of talked about how sustainability in general, what's going to happen, climate change in general, what we're going to see here in Edmonton. I've talked about the importance of solar and energy efficiency and the science behind those. So today I kind of wanted to talk to you about why the community is so important. And I've kind of touched on this in some of the other workshops, but in the scientific community, it's called community-based adaptation. So anything a community league does in terms of sustainability is community-based adaptation. Basically, local communities combining together with this to combine their skills, experience, knowledge, and their networks to incorporate activities that increase resilience. So one of the big things that comes out of the research in terms of community-based adaptation is how important it is, not only for engagement and engaging your communities, but also the importance of support from above. And one of the main ones that the research shows is funding. So that's the ways that many of these programs are supported, is through the funding. Another thing that I've kind of talked about is communication and how you tell your story and how important that is in terms of not only, I've talked about it in terms of selling it to your board, but now it's also important when you're writing these grants, because now you're not only selling it to your board, you also now have to sell your project as an important one to the grant administrators, to the people that you're hoping will give you money. And the way you sell your story depends on which grant you're applying to. If you're applying to a sustainability one, you want to frame it in terms of greenhouse gas emission reductions or innovation or sustainability. If you're applying to one that's focused on facilities, you want to focus on, preserving a community hub or community engagement or those kind of words. Community leadership are very important. So it really depends on who you're applying to and what kind of that you can tell the same story by telling it different ways based on who wants to hear it, who you want to hear. Also, what's really important, especially for granting, is link it to their organization. What's their goals, and how does your project fit in with their goals? So that's very important in terms of how you sell your story, because it makes it easy for a grant administrator to say, they'll help us accomplish what we want to do. So they can take that to their boss and hopefully get a check mark on their stamp. So in terms of what we're going to talk about today, there's kind of two funding areas. There's the governmental grants, which is what we're really going to focus on today. The three levels, municipal, provincial, and federal. Fortunately, federal, there's not a whole lot of money for community leagues right now, so we're going to focus on municipal and provincial. But that's not to say that there aren't other sources. And I'm going to quickly touch on some of them at the beginning as well. So just touching on those, the first one, other granting sources. So the government is not the only place you can get a grant. One of the big ones is banks. The only problem with some of these other funding sources is that you have to be a charity in a lot of them. which community leagues in general are nonprofits, so they can't apply for some of these. However, that's not to say that all of the programs are like that or all the community leagues are nonprofits, because I believe that there's 2 within the city that are charities. So that is an option if they're open. I just listed a couple here that I know of. The recycling one is for tire recycling, so maybe that's not a part of your project, maybe it is. So they are trying to encourage people to use recycled tires in playgrounds or in patios or those kind of
Which is that
sources.
ARMU?
Yes, the Alberta Recycling Management Authority. Choosewell and cooperatives are big on community facilities, so they might be good places to go for solar and energy efficiency. Walmart, I thought, was an interesting one. They let the individual store. So if you have a local store, that store has a very small amount of money that they can give out every year. So that might be something that if they support your community and to show kind of community support. And then the Edmonton Heritage Council is another one. So there are these organizations out there that could also support your funding.
Charlotte, I approached the bank that the Cloverdale Community League uses. And the manager just directed me to their website in Toronto.
Yeah.
And they've just got some very specific corporate goals, might be literacy or children and stuff like that. So we didn't approach our bank and not interested in shopping around to see which bank offers stuff for environmental things.
There are some banks that are more focused on the sustainability aspects than others. So I know Scotiabank is really big on sustainability initiatives, and they do put a lot of money into those kind of things. I'm trying to think of...
TV actually has a whole foundation called TV Friends of the Environment, but again, it's for charitable groups too.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So it depends on, I guess, which bank you're a part of. And like I said, some of these may work and some of them won't. It really depends on kind of the organization and what they're looking for, which is why they're a little bit harder to find, because they're everywhere and they're for all these different things and for different organizations. I'm just going to quickly crowdfunding. I know Robin is going to talk to you a little bit more about it in her presentation. I just wanted to mention it here because it is a way to connect with your neighbors and to get your neighbors involved through technology. However, Robin has personal experience, so we're going to let her talk about that. Another way is through here at the EFCL, we have an Energizing Communities Award. So this we did last year, and Burnwood was the recipient. This year it's for $2,500 for an energy efficiency project within the community leagues. So unfortunately, we don't have the details as to due dates or applications yet, but as soon as I have those, I will send it out to you guys to aid in your energy efficiency project. So that's something to watch out for on the horizon coming into. So that was kind of the other funding, quick little thing I wanted to touch on before moving on to the grants that are available. Some things I wanted to say before we get into specific ones, though, is that always apply for more than you need. The chances are you may or may not get some. You may need to hit more, your project may turn into bigger than it should be, so always it's very important to apply for more funds than you actually think you'll end up needing. It's better to have to give some funds back than not have enough to finish your project. And so we're going to talk about municipal grants next, but something to keep in mind is that not all grants can be applied with together. So City of Edmonton here is an example, is that you can only apply for one City of Edmonton grant. You can't apply to them for the same project. So things like that are very important, is that some grants can't be combined with other grants. And in that same kind of vein, many grants will only cover certain aspects of it. So if you were applying for that tire one, it would only cover the tires. The rest of your project would need to come from another source. So something like a facility upgrade, some of the projects would cover the whole thing, whereas some of the sustainability ones would only cover the sustainability aspects of that. So it's important to keep in mind which line items certain grants will cover, which ones they won't. And in that, again, each grant will only cover a certain percentage of those line items. So while something like CLIP will cover your entire project, it will only cover 50% of that entire project. Whereas sustainability one, same thing. It'll cover the say, lighting or HVAC system or what have you, but it will only cover a percentage of that. So those kind of exceptions and connections all need to be made in order to make the project, to get the most of the funding that you can have. And that's a part of what I'm here for as well, is to help you navigate that, because it does tend to be confusing, and making sure you're applying for the right grants at the right time in order to get the most of the funding that you have.
Can you say a little bit more about your first bullet, apply for more funds than you need? I know that the CLIP grant and the CFEP grants, they have a budget. On the one side of the, you have the project costs, and then the funding side, and they have to balance. I'm not sure where I saw a fudge factor that says, the Charlotte factor.
Yes.
And add 20%.
No, I think it's applied to more funders, maybe. So let's say you get declined, and because all of
that's
the
different.
deadlines all align, make sure that you're applying.
That's different than what it says there.
Yeah. I'll make that clear in the next one. Unfortunately, there's no line item Charlotte factor. I wish there could be. So just moving on, we're going to talk about the municipal grants first. And the big one I'm sure all of you know of is CLIP. So CLIP is the Community League Infrastructure Program. So it's basically for the buildings, fences, baseball courts, skating rinks, anything that infrastructure-wise that a community league puts on. They're one of the biggest funders for these types of programs in terms of energy efficiency and solar projects. The main part for this is talk to your community recreation coordinator, your CRC. They're the first point of contact in terms of these things. They'll have the most information about which projects will work and which ones won't. They're kind of the main source of contact for the CLIP grants. And within, like I said, so within the types of projects that you can do, there's also various different costs that CLIP will cover within that. So the main ones here that I wanted to talk to you about are the mechanical and electrical equipment and the appliances. So those are about the energy efficiency saving ones. Other ones that are really interesting are the design costs, the first bullet point, because that one is about that'll cover your energy audit. If that's up to 50% of your energy audit could be covered for right there. Another one to note is the project management. This is kind of a relatively new one, so it's kind of undersubscribed in terms of community leagues who take advantage of this. If you're planning a big project, you can write in to give someone a small salary, because it is a large project. That's a lot of work for a volunteer to take on. So in order to make this projects happen quicker and more efficiently, you can write in some cost for project management if that's something that you're interested in. Like I said, that's more for the bigger projects as opposed to the smaller ones. As many of you know, there's three different ways for CLIP. There's a small, medium, and large awards based on the amount of funding that you need. These basically, so the smaller the amount, the more often you can apply for. You can apply for up to $25,000 every year. And then it gets into the bigger ones, which are only every 10 years. So the thing to remember with CLIP is that it's 50% of matching funds. So basically the premise there is if you're asking for $10,000, you have to either have $10,000 of community league money or have other granting or funding sources to match that 10 grand. So 10 grand, so the total cost of that project would be 20 grand. The way you apply for it is based heavily on your Stantec report. For those of you who don't know, in 2011, I believe, the community leagues, all of the community leagues, got surveyed by Stantec in terms of deferred maintenance that needed to be done, structural problems, electrical, anything like that was all surveyed by Stantec. So I have all of these reports if your community league doesn't have your copy of them. But so the CLIP grant is based on these. In terms of based on need, the CLIP money comes from a big pool of funding. So far, this is the first year that we've almost reached the limit of that. So in terms of money that you want to apply for, this is a very good funding stream because we've never over-applied. There's nobody who has ever applied and not gotten it as long as their application was full and complete. But based on need, because we are kind of reaching the the full point of that, what I've been told is that based on your Stantec report, it says your structural deficiencies or your electrical system needs to be upgraded within 10 years, or it lists out these things that need to be done to your building. So the way that they base on need is if you need to do structural things come first, or the things outlined in your Stantec report will come first. If you want to add something like solar or energy efficiency or nice to have, then those are kind of above and beyond.
Would you know if the Stantec reports from 2011 are still available electronically for league? You know, there's been so much turnover in our community league. I'm wondering if we would be able to get an electronic copy for our new facilities person.
Yes, I have it. I can send it to you if you'd like it. So I will send you the Riverdale one. Same thing for anyone else. If you don't have it or don't think your community league has it, I can send that to you as well.
How many community leagues is there in that report or whatever?
There's 123, I believe, community league buildings across the city. I don't think that all of them were surveyed based on their new, or they had recently done a similar survey. So if they were disqualified, if they a year or two earlier they had done something similar. So so there's some that didn't get them, but the rest of them did get these reports.
The file is
It is huge.
it's almost one for all.
Okay, I was just wondering, like, to approach some of the different leagues or whatever to do a solar install or whatever, what kind of, people who we would go and see to spread our names around into that aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's only the community league should have this already, and if they don't, then I can give it to the community league.
Yeah.
But yeah, but this is definitely important because it is something that they base their applications on. So they're due it around the end of March every year. So this year it's coming up, March 2018. And something else that you may want to keep in mind is that they can be applied for retroactively. So this is from the current pot of money. If you've done a project, say you started in January, you started spending in January, you can apply for those to get those funds refunded to you. Again, there's a little bit of risk involved with that because it is from the current amount of money. So if they overspend in that pot of money, then there is a risk in terms you might not get those funds back. Is there any other questions on CLIP? Yep.
Just a quick comment. So we used the Stantec report in a number of times when we've applied, and it really does make your application stronger.
Yeah.
The city really likes to see you fixing those things in the Stantec report. It surprisingly aligns with a lot of this stuff anyways. But recently we did the audit with the Green Leagues program, and that was just as powerful. So the city responded just as well to that as a document supporting the need to do this stuff. So it's important to build the need, and those two documents are really, really helpful.
Mm-hmm. And Stantec reports aren't necessary because they do kind of base it around the Stantec reports, but not everyone has one based on the various different reasons. So David is right, all of those demonstrating need, all of those project planning kind of materials do really make your application strong and add to the CLIP's incentive to give you funds. So now I'm going to introduce Robin, who's going to talk about some of the other city grants as well as some of the things we talked about.
So we created City Edmonton so that community groups had a place that they could go to receive funding to get environmental programs started in their neighborhood. So unlike a lot of the grants that you're going to hear about today, City Edmonton isn't one that is entirely focused on building infrastructure. It can also be applied for things like programming in your community league. So for instance, say you wanted to do something like holding educational sessions, sort of like some of the sessions that we've held for leagues. You wanted to do one on energy efficiency for people who lived in your neighborhood. City Edmonton could support something like that. However, we have actually supported some larger infrastructure projects in community leagues. Rocky told her story about Riverdale Community League and their solar gazebo. We were a funder of that. We've also helped Evansdale with the second part of their solar installation. The only catch with City Edmonton that's different from these other projects is that if we're going to fund an infrastructure project on your building, we want you to tell us what you're going to do to engage your community and telling them about why you decided to do that project. So are you going to put up signage that tells people about the amount of energy that's being produced from the solar and how much of that supplies the community league building? Or are you going to write newsletter articles, all sorts of different things? For instance, actually, Rocky and I and David and others were the ones who actually set up the Green Leagues program, and it was part of Rocky's commitment from her EcoCity Edmonton grant was to share the story of what Riverdale did with other community leagues. So we actually ended up setting up this program as part of Riverdale's commitment to try to tell others in Edmonton about what they had done. So there's 3 different categories of grants. There are small grants that are up to $7,500. Our medium-sized ones are up to $20,000, and then the larger ones, the Energy Transition Acceleration grants, are up to $50,000. So the ones that are up to $50,000 are the ones where we're expecting more quantified greenhouse gas emissions. So they would be something like if you put a solar system on your roof, or if you implemented some of the things that came out in an energy audit report, and it's actually been quantified what your emissions reduction or your energy reduction would be from those projects. The smaller grants, the medium-sized ones would be for some of those educational opportunities that I was telling you about, but they have to be fairly large in scope. So not just ones that would talk to people in your neighborhood, but where you're a little bit more committed to telling Edmontonians in general about it. And the ones up to $7,500 are the ones that are for things that could include educational initiatives in your neighborhood. For instance, we got a $7,500 grant from a nonprofit housing co-op this year, and they have a lot of lawn care equipment that had been using mixed gas fuels. So they decided that they wanted to put a small solar installation on their shed, and then they went out and bought electric mowers and all electric equipment. So these are the ones that can be really creative. You can do all sorts of different ideas. They're not necessarily just about building infrastructure, like I said. So with EcoCity Edmonton, we do fund a lot of projects from long-standing environmental groups in Edmonton, but we've had at least 2 community leagues that have applied in every one of our intakes in those few years, and we've funded a couple of community league projects each time too, because we realize that community leagues have that ability to bring neighbors in and to tell stories. So the deadline for EcoCity Edmonton takes place in March of each year. We have a funding committee that's made up of people from the city and other community members that decides on the grants. Unlike something like CLIP, EcoCity Edmonton is very competitive. So you should note that we usually get about 3 times the amount of applications for the amount of money that we have to give away. So we like to be honest to people in saying that it's a pretty competitive process. So we encourage them to either call myself or our partners at Alberta EcoTrust. They're an environmental foundation that helps the city actually administer the EcoCity Edmonton project. So either of us would be happy. So we'll do coaching on your projects. I've had lots of long conversations with community leagues about, okay, so I'm applying for CLIP, I'm applying for the province's Community Facility Enhancement Grant, and I'm applying to EcoCity Edmonton. And they've showed me their large overall budget, and we've had to go through and sort of take things out and be like, okay, CLIP and the Community Facility Enhancement Grant, you can apply, your flooring, sure, that's fine for them, but I'm going to axe that out on the budget that you're going to send to our project because those aren't eligible costs for us. So again, it can't be about just aesthetic things in your building. It has to be about things that reduce energy use or actually produce renewable energy would be the sort of infrastructure pieces that would be interesting to us. That being said, we are really excited to maybe be able to push the envelope with some projects in community leagues this year. We've been talking to some leagues that are interested in putting things like electric vehicle charging stations. Some of them have even been talking to some solar installers about maybe being a test site for putting battery storage in their halls. So this is really a grant that can be used for really innovative projects too. So while some of the other grants that we're talking about later today are ones that are really sort of, qualify and get money, this is one where, use your imagination, think of interesting things, and also think about how you're going to engage community members in telling them about the message. You can put in money for things like staff time into this grant versus the other ones where that's not so much an eligible cost. So, or if you need volunteer stipends for people to facilitate a workshop or something like that, for instance, those are all eligible costs. I think it's Edmonton. Oh no, never mind. You guys have it on your form. I was going to give you the URL to find information. Yeah. I also have some cards here if anyone wants one of those. I'm happy to talk more about EcoCity Edmonton and also a proposal that perhaps merges some of the other grants. Because our one will provide up to 80% of funding for eligible projects. So you would need 20% matching funds. So again, the matching funds could be in actual dollars that your community league has in your bank account from another funder, but it also could be in in-kind hours. So if you have a bunch of people in your neighborhood that have agreed to do some volunteer labor for you, we'll help you actually quantify that and put it in a number into your budget too. So we'd like to value the volunteer time that people put into their projects. I think that's about all. Should we talk about the crowdfunding stuff? I'm just gonna go back.
You got a lot out of that slide, Robin.
I was gonna say I didn't even have any of my prompts. I think I did okay. I don't think I left anything out. So I understand, community leagues are pretty good at getting money from neighbors for projects, but I think the use of some of these crowdfunding sites might be beneficial to some of you to make the gathering of money from community members quite a bit easier. So the ones behind me are just a few of the names of sites that you could use to set up a crowdfunding campaign. They really stress for these to work well, again, it has to be sort of narrative. You have to tell a story about what you want to do. They really encourage you to actually make a small video about what your project is and what you want to do. They all have various administrative fees associated with them, but some of them are quite low, like around the 2% mark. So again, you'd go on, you create a profile, you'd be able to actually put the amount that you need to raise, and then you can see as people start to put funds into your pot, your little thermometer goes up and down or down, whatever way you want. So I use this, I'm a board member of the Edmonton Tool Library. We're actually located out of Bellevue Community League, where Brian had to leave, yeah. We use this to get the tool library off the ground, and we were able to successfully fundraise $5,000, which is what our goal was, and we were astounded by the amount of money that we got from people who didn't know any of us were involved, who really liked our idea. So again, I'd encourage you just to use this as a way that's administratively less burdensome to your treasurer and people in your organization. It's really easy for people to just go in, put their credit card information, and then it just directly deposits it into your league bank account I think it's every 2 weeks or something like that. So they're really, really easy to use. So not just for your sustainability projects, but for other things that your league might be up to consider using this just as a platform for people in your neighborhood to be able to contribute as well too. And then the really nice thing about it is when you want to do some recognition at the end, this just spits you out the names of everyone who participated in your campaign. So we at the Tool Library made some nice frames, and we put everyone's names in them so you can see all of our donors as you walk through the door too. Canada Helps is one that lots of charities tend to use, and you might actually have to be a charity to use that one. Mm-hmm.
You have to have a registration.
Yes, yeah. All right.
There's a friend of mine who's involved in a international organization based here in Edmonton, but does work in Africa and Kenya. And they're hooked up with ATB Financial. So when you go to this outfit's website and you want to make a donation, you click on a link that ATB Financial is involved in.
Okay.
They match 30%.
Oh,
So if you contribute, No, 15%. So if you contribute $100, then ATB will
Put 15 in.
put $15
And-
in on that.
ATB actually gave us a sponsorship as the tool library as well too. They're not even our bank. So I think my suggestion with the financial institutions is I would approach ATB and credit unions first, because they're local and they're a little bit more feet on the ground if you're thinking about getting a sponsorship from either of them. I've heard of community leagues that have both gotten money from both of those sources.
So those were kind of the main municipal to grants that you may want to look at. Both CLIP and EcoCity are big ones in terms of municipal grants that are available for community leagues. So I just wanted to quickly kind of talk about the provincial ones before we take a break and hear from our last two presenters this afternoon. But CFEP is the facility-wide one. This one's focused specifically on a provincial-wide facilities that support communities. So this is like permanent structures, parks, playgrounds, natural areas as well, and fields and playgrounds as well. Basically, the acronym is the Community Facility Enhancement Program. But so within those categories, they cover building a new building, buying a facility that's already existing, or even retrofitting your space, as well as they cover a lot of these feasibility studies and the planning ones. So auditing, design fees, and those kind of things as well. So these ones, again, there's two streams. So there's a small stream.
Where do you have CFEP on here?
Sorry?
Where is this on here?
I think it's the very first one at the top. Yes. So this can support both energy efficiency and solar, because it is just about the building itself and the infrastructure. Again, there's two streams, the small one and the large one. Small one has three intakes, whereas the larger one only has the one. And just like CLIP, it has a 50% matching requirement. So again, they'll give you $10,000 if you support the rest of the other $10,000 to have a $20,000 project. That doesn't have to be community league money. It can also be from other granting programs or volunteer time, or as well as community money as well, to make up that 50%. The catch with this one that I always try to point out is that for all the provincial programs, CFEP will only provide up to 50%. So if you are getting other provincial funding that says, say it's 10%, they'll only provide up to 40% of your project costs to make that 50% from the province. Does that make sense? Is there any questions about that? Yeah, so they'll only allow 50% to come from the province. The difference between CFEP and CLIP is that CLIP is a little bit more infrastructure based, whereas CFEP is a lot more about the story. It's how you tell your story. But because it's not a sustainability one, it's about the facility itself. So the main things that they want to hear about is how it helps your local economy, how it relates to the people and businesses around you, as well as how it increases the lifespan of your facility. So how your project ensures that your community league will be there for years to come. So framing your story around kind of those two aspects are really important for CFEP. The other thing I wanted to point out, I've written 2 or 3 of these for other community leagues already, and one of the main sticking points that always comes up is the question, who is directly affected by your project? This is hard for community leagues just because there's so many people that come through a community league in a year. So to quantify this tends to be kind of one of the most difficult aspects of the community league or the application, and really all they want is a number. But so that includes your play group that's there, or your community league members, or renters, or people who use the facility. So how are these people affected, and how many of them are there? So I just wanted to say that when approaching this is very important information to get, is to connect with all the people who run these programs and organize these things in order to get the numbers.
You might also want to think about how are they negatively affected by a building that is in a poorer state too, and sort of convincing them that the programs and stuff are not running smoothly as a result of the fact that the building is not in a good state.
Or if it's enhancing it, how could then that attract more people? Again, to relate it back to the economy, if you upgrade your building, that increases the amount of renters potentially, or types of programs that you can run, or and those affect the local economy, local businesses, and perhaps create an opportunity to grow.
Economy and service to the community.
Exactly.
I think they like it to touch as many people as possible. So
Yes.
the Dream project is like a park project, because you could say this park project serves the 50,000 residents that use this district park, or the 20,000 residents that use a smaller park. It's just build that story. Community leads, you can just think about it for a minute, touch a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So just build that story.
Which is why that question is so difficult, because it's hard to quantify, and there's so many people in so many different ways, shapes, and forms. So that's always one of the hard parts in writing these applications, is getting that one number in terms of writing your story and saying how important it is in order to keep this community hub kind of there and available.
Just really quick of what we are. So we're actually a fairly old now joint initiative between the government of Alberta and then the two municipal associations across Alberta. So the AUMA represents urban municipalities, and the AMDNC represents rural municipalities. So the two of those got together and worked with what is now the Alberta Climate Change Office, as well as Municipal Affairs, to set up a center that really focuses just on municipal climate change. So our primary audience is municipalities all across Alberta. But as a part of that, we also work with nonprofit community-related organizations within the municipalities, because they're obviously very connected to the municipal operations. So community leagues here in Edmonton have actually been one of our best participants throughout the years, so we're always happy to come and speak to you. But other than that, so basically we do receive funding that we can provide back to the participants through grant programs. We also do education, outreach, and then technical assistance throughout the project as well. So we help in a variety of ways. And now we also have a new program that I'll speak to that's actually through Energy Efficiency Alberta. So we have a second funder now in that sense. I guess because of this, so we're not really an entity of our own. We're really just a project across all four of those organizations. But think of us as a third-party nonprofit for all intents and purposes. We're not affiliated with any company. We're not benefiting in any way from selling you stuff. So we obviously want to help you with funding, but we can also be really good at providing advice throughout the project. And if you're being lobbied by different vendors and trying to figure out what the right solutions are, that kind of thing, we're not them, so we can be a good independent source of advice if you need that as well. So the first program I want to talk about is our Alberta Municipal Solar Program. So this one we started just coming up on a year, I guess. We received $5 million to give back to municipalities and community-related organizations for solar PV systems, so not hot water, but the electric type, that are grid connected on or related to municipal facilities. So they do have to be compliant with the Alberta microgeneration regulation, which is probably don't need to go too much into today, but it means it has to be grid connected instead of batteries. It means it does have to be associated with a building or a load. So and finally, that you can't generate more than what you use. So you're not going to become like a solar farm or a power plant or anything like that, but you can use solar to offset your the electricity used by your facility. So it actually works really. Yes.
Well, so if you're grid connected but just have a small battery for, like, say if your league is a muster point and, if in a time of flood everybody's supposed to go to the hall, if you had if you were grid connected but had backup power for like a day or something, could that be cool?
Yeah, that's not really the same. So basically you have to be connected to the grid so that the power is going to the grid back and forth. If you have a backup energy system, that's completely unrelated.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would be wired differently as well. So technically most solar projects that are grid connected will go down when the power's down. So you're not going to be running off your solar. But if you have like a generator or a battery or anything for emergency power, that's not what they mean.
Okay, cool.
They mean like you're not doing an off-grid house kind of thing.
Just stand sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way our rebate system works is we have two criteria. So the first is we look at the size of the system, and we give a rebate per unit of size. So the sort of the nameplate when you buy a solar panel system is the capacity measured in watts. And so our rebate for the smaller systems is 90 cents per watt. And then for larger systems, we give 75 cents per watt. There's actually two more scales, but I think it's pretty impossible to hit the larger megawatt scale with the community league, so I grade them out for you. In theory, if you had a massive building and you wanted to go that big, I was looking at the biggest one, I don't think your rooftop's big enough. So unless you want to fill your whole like grass field with solar panels and have a really crazy load, you probably can't hit that one. So you'd be looking at 75 cents or 90 cents per watt for the smaller ones, up to a maximum of 25% of the eligible expenses. So if you have a really cheap system, you might hit the 25%. If you have a fairly typical price system, you'll get the 90 cents or the 75 cents per watt. So that's just a quick look at the rebate levels. A few examples, we've like I said, community leagues have been great participants so far. We have Riverdale, which I don't know, Robin, if the video is going to be ready soon. There's a probably upcoming video one day, maybe.
We made a nice video about Rocky's project in Riverdale, but I actually just got an email after the
Yeah, so
it's just about ready.
we saw a draft and it looked excellent.
We'll send it around with all the materials so you guys can see it.
And obviously Evansdale has been doing this for a while, Belgravia, and a couple more under construction today. So there are some good examples out there if you're wanting to hear from them. They're always a really great resource because they've just gone through it and you can speak to them and learn what their process was. We also do help with that as well. So basically we're here talking because we have a lot of money left. We have $2.4 million still available out of the 5. So we're just past halfway right now. And we're going to continue accepting applications. We're saying till April 30th right now. That's probably a lie. The main reason is we have to be done by December 31st of 2018. And with the time that it takes to install solar, we have to give ourselves a bit of buffer so that we finish by then. So likely we'll go past this for smaller projects because they tend to be able to be installed quite quickly. So I could see it going probably up until the summer. So basically winter is a really great time. A lot of solar installers are not really going to be putting up panels on sloped roofs during the winter time. So they'll be a bit more available to do assessments and to help get you ready for installing a system. And so what you could do is get approval from us at any point sort of over the winter or spring, and then as soon as it's time to do the install, you're ready to go. When a funding agreement is signed with us, we give up to 8 months to complete the project. So you could figure out, generally, even if you did that today, you'd probably still have time in the spring. So you could apply at any time. Now, applications in our program is quite a bit different than probably some of the other funding sources that you'll apply for. So I have just an example here. The very first step is to submit an expression of interest, which is a non-binding, basically just notification to us that you're out there and that you want to do a project. It's a super quick, one-page type of website thing. You fill out your name, really hard questions like what's your address. Actually, the hardest thing we ask really is just what's your energy use for a year, typical. So you'd fill that out. We receive that on our end, and then we immediately try to schedule a call with you to walk through the program, make sure you understand all the details. From there, if you're still interested in going forward, our next step, which is the actual application, that's where you would have a contract with a vendor and a full quote from them, as well as some paperwork that you need to do anyways for solar. So there's some steps kind of on your end in between when we first talk to you and when you come back to the actual application, and we'll help you with all those. So for example, we highly recommend you talk to three different companies to get 3 different quotes. We can give you some guidance on questions to ask, what reasonable prices are, all that information. And then once you're ready with that, you would come back to us with an application. When we receive an application, if it meets the kind of the criteria of the program, so the solar system is eligible, you have all the things that we need, there's no letter writing or convincing us. You get the rebate. That's just how it works. So if you're eligible and we have money left, then you're approved, and we'll sign a funding agreement. It's not a question of us picking the top 10 or the best ones. It really just has to meet our requirements. It's kind of like a I guess, a rebate or incentive program or coupon where as long as you meet the conditions, you'll get the funding and go ahead. So for that reason, we're usually a pretty good place to start. If you're thinking of doing solar, because on one hand, we'll help you through every step of the way. And on the other hand, you can get our funding. Our funding agreement will spell out exactly what you'll get from us and what the conditions are. And so then you can use that to go to everybody else and say, look, I have this percentage of funding. And we don't really count as provincial funding as far as I can tell for the overlapping. The only restrictions we have is that we can't fund something that the Alberta Climate Change Group is also funding. So Energy Efficiency Alberta, for example, who also has a solar program, you would not be able to get funding from them. But any other municipal or provincial or federal funds generally would have no problem going with us. So that's the other reason why it's good to start with us. So like I said, if you're interested in this, we do have lots of information on our website. We have a whole guidebook that really walks through every step of the program. If you're keen to read up on that, if not, the easiest is just fill out an expression of interest and we'll call you back pretty quick and explain everything to you again. The other thing I wanted to cover though that we actually just recently published, it's a guide on solar, which we really geared towards municipalities, but I think it has a lot of really useful information there. It's a 3-part, it's PDF, so I don't really know what the form of it is, but it's kind of like documents on solar. We call it Solar Friendly Municipalities because it really is aiming at getting municipalities and community-related organizations to be leaders on solar. The first document of the collection is really just Solar 101. We didn't call it that, but that's basically what it is. It talks about what is solar, what's the technology, what are all the pieces of it, how do you get a system in place, what are all the processes, what's the cost. Kind of all that basic information is all tucked into one document. So if you have any questions, that's a really great place to start. The next ones are more on how can municipalities themselves make better permitting processes and stuff. So you might be interested in that, probably not super helpful. The last one is on community outreach and engaging the community around solar. So that's, again, I think, another useful one that it gives good examples and really cool ways that...
That's on your website now?
Yeah, that's all on our website. So it's got guides and examples on how to get communities involved. So again, you're not a municipality, but very similar role of putting up a solar PV system in a place that lots of people are connected to and lots of people are going to ask questions and look at to see if they want to do that themselves. The other thing we have on here that we built is we worked with a local college to make an Alberta-specific solar calculator. So we built this because we were getting a lot of feedback when people are going around shopping for quotes that companies they're trying to sell solar. So they're going to make the payback often a little bit better than what it really is. And people were skeptical and they were saying, okay, well, this one person's giving this one number, this other person's saying that the same system's going to generate twice as much. So we really tried to make this as an independent way of kind of double checking things. So a model's a model, they're not always perfect, but you can go fill it out and get a pretty good sense of what your payback should be. I'm looking at solar on my house, so I printed it all off and I kind of asked them hard questions on why there's a 3-year difference. And we had a good discussion there. So you got to get into were their assumptions valid and all that stuff. So if you want to nerd out or if you're trying to compare what you're getting from quotes, we would also be there to help you through that as well. The other program we have, which we haven't been telling people a lot about because it's technically paused at the exact moment, is we have an energy audit and energy management plan program. It's called the Nonprofit Energy Transition, or NEAT. This is a program we have where we receive funding from Energy Efficiency Alberta to support nonprofits in getting energy audits done. Really, the whole purpose of this is to help nonprofit organizations be prepared to take the best advantage of all upcoming programs. So an energy audit's really valuable because it's a systematic approach of going through your building, looking at the areas where there's already pretty good efficiencies and the areas where there's room for improvement, and then giving you ideas of things you can directly implement to improve them. But even more so, they're a guide in the sense that they'll give you an expected cost of implementation. So if you have an old furnace and you want to upgrade to a high efficiency one, The audit will be a really good resource for telling you what that cost should be, what your energy savings would probably be, and therefore you can figure out the payback, your energy savings, and really make an informed decision. There's some stuff like lighting. If you have incandescent bulbs and you want to go to LED, just do it today. It's 100% worthwhile. But some of the other stuff that's more complicated, like heating equipment, or if you have outdoor arenas and all that kind of stuff, sometimes it's more nuanced, and you want to spend your money because you have always limited financial resources. You want to put it in the areas that make the most sense. So the audit is a good way of kind of looking at the whole building so that you don't accidentally upgrade one half and not the other, and then you just end up dumping your high efficiency heat like right out of a window that's not sealed properly. So the NEAT program, it covers, right now it's supposed to cover up to 100% of the costs up to $10,000 for an audit. We're actually right now working on the exact details. It probably will change, but the premise is that it's either very close to free or free energy audits for most buildings that are the size of a community league. I say that because it is on a scale of the size of the building, and so there are some cases where it's not exactly free because it'll be like, let's say, $10,500 and we only cover up to $10,000. We're trying to get it expanded a bit so that it is always free for small buildings. And what you get with that is pretty much the highest level of energy audit, so an ASHRAE level 2, which is super detailed. And we also work with the consultant to build an energy management plan. So not only do they do the super technical audit, but then they'll sit down and work with you on what your budget is, what your long-term plans for the building are, because maybe you're planning on changing the windows anyways, or you're going to do some other retrofit. They'll work with you with that sort of building specific context to make a plan of what order you should do things in the next 2 to 3 years, even up to 5 years. And they'll also try to connect you with any rebate program that there is for those specific things. So if they say, hey, I noticed your furnace is old and your hot water tank is old and your lights need to be replaced, you should do your lighting in year 1, here's the rebate program you should be applying to. Your furnace is also eligible through this other program. And as more and more programs come out with Efficiency Alberta, they'll be connecting you more and more to those as they come out. So as I mentioned, this program, it ran like a first wave back in January, and we've started those audits already. And there's a second wave that should be starting. We're just literally waiting to hear back the details on the changes we requested. We were supposed to be launched a couple weeks ago, so it's kind of any time probably between now and November, it'll reopen to new applicants. And super simple. Again, it'll be a pretty short application process like the expression of interest, except for from there, you basically have nothing to do after that but sign a sheet of paper and show up the day of. Everything else, we've pre-hired all the contractors, so they'll just phone you up, schedule a date. If you're under 10 grand, you don't even have to cut any checks or pay anything. We tried to make it as easy as possible. I'm probably past my time, so the rest is really easy. Normally, we'd have more to talk about. We had 2 other energy efficiency programs. They are both very successful, and in the past week, both of them ran out of money. So we are now not doing energy efficiency anymore, but just for some street cred, I threw up the community leagues that did participate. So you can all feel very proud, and we appreciate all of you for participating. So thank you. Yeah, it was great. The City of Edmonton, the community leagues are by far the leaders on our uptake within the city. Yes,
super awesome.
you're beating the city.
Yes.
Or you were. Actually, that's not on efficiency now. They just signed $1 million.
In our own city facilities, the community leagues were beating us.
So you said when you do the NEAT audit, though, there's other energy efficiency programs that will be other than Tame and Tame Plus, or?
Well, so nonprofits like yourselves can actually apply to Energy Efficiency Alberta as well. And so that's what we're saying here is the B&I program that David, I think you're going to talk about, right? That's eligible today for some stuff, and there might be future programs because they're still ramping up. We really do expect there'll be more and more programs as it evolves. And so we'll be, I guess, adjusting to that as new ones come out, and as we hear of new ones coming out, we'll make sure that those audits then include,
So
connect
the
people
Tame
to
and
them.
Tame Plus is done,
Those are both done until we get more funding.
but so they might be resurrected?
They might be. Yeah, we don't
Okay.
know.
All right.
Yeah, we never know until we get agreements with funding and everything. So anyway, thank you for your time. I won't take any more of it, but if you have any questions, contact at MCCAC or go visit our website. You can find all these things. There's only 4 of us there, so you'll get either myself or our other 3 great people, and they'll do their best to help you in any way we can.
Today I'm going to take you on a little journey relating to our story about funding today to my community league, which is Evansdale. I've been involved there for 20-some years, and it's funny because my 2 lives never did intersect until about 5 years ago. There was my coaching soccer life, and there was my green technologies and solar life, and the 2 ne'er shall meet until about 5 years ago. Actually, when I said I don't want to be president anymore because I've been there for 20 years and coached soccer for 10 and basketball for 15, and I said, I need something different. I'll only stay if you let me be your director of sustainability. And they said, sure. So I started doing projects first as part of bigger infrastructure projects. So I wove energy efficiency into the big infrastructure projects, which I found it easier to get the money that way. I didn't have to justify anything. They just said yes. And I started doing these projects. So we started, actually, our project was inspired by a program that was started by the EFCL about, I don't even know how long ago, probably 10 years ago.
2011, 2012, I think.
2011, 2012. So we did a pilot program where we had some extra money from, I forget what it was for. It was similar purpose for the money. And then we went out to the leagues with the city and we said, if you're willing to invest $6,000, we'll give you $22,000 worth of solar and some energy monitoring stuff and an audit, I think, at the time. It was great value. So all the community leagues had to do was invest $6,000. I designed this program selfishly because I wanted to do it at my league. So we had so many community leagues enter, though, for these 7 limited spots that we didn't make the draw. So I was kind of disappointed, but all the other leagues that participated, which you can see there, weren't. So these were demonstration systems. So this was kind of how it began. These are about 1.2 kilowatts, but you're barely going to notice the production on your electricity bills. It's more about demonstration, more about proof of concept, that sort of thing. So maybe it was a blessing in disguise that we weren't successful because we decided to do it on our own anyways as part of a big infrastructure project. We were building a new rink, a new winter sports facility, otherwise known as the skate shack, and a few other. It doesn't seem right to call it the skate shack. It's a gorgeous facility. So we called it our winter sports facility. Actually, we called it our all-season sports facility when we were even getting more dramatic about it. So this was part of a big project. It was probably $800,000 or $900,000 before we were done. We wove the first half of our solar project into it. So we hired Howell Mayhew Engineering to do it. And Gordon, in his infinite wisdom, he's one of the fathers of, probably the father of the solar industry in Western Canada. He's been doing it since about the time solar was invented. And so he had the wisdom to give us a design for a solar system that had 2 parts to it, even from day one. So we said, look, we only want to spend $40,000 or $44,000 or whatever it was as part of this project. And so he designed it just like you see in the picture there, half of the roof, and we wove it into a CLIP project. We got money from CFEP. Actually, I have a slide for that coming up, I think. Yeah, so the first project was a 13.6 kilowatt solar system. Total cost was $43,500. And in this project, we had CLIP money, CFEP money, and our own Evansdale fundraising. So bingos, selling popcorn, whatever you do as a community league. And it was all part of an $800,000 project. We thought it was kind of cool. As part of that project, we also, I'm jumping to the other part. So I think the slide will come up. As part of this project, we also did LED lights for the rink. And that was huge because you're replacing 1,000-watt lights with 400-watt lights that are actually better than the previous lights you had. And we replaced our parking lot lights as well with LEDs. So that really made a difference because those things are on, a lot in the wintertime. Unfortunately, not when our solar's producing. So then we didn't actually come up with the idea of doing the second solar project. Gordon Howell, the guy that sold us the solar system, was cruising through Robin's website, which is funny because I should have known about it. I was involved in it at the beginning, but I'd never thought of applying to it. And Gordon said, can I write your application for you? So this is the guy that sold us the solar. And we said, yeah, you can do that. So we helped him and we wrote the application. And I must admit, getting EcoCity funding is like winning the lottery at Christmas time or something, because you get I think we got 75% of our funding. Boom, you're in your project. You know, it's so easy, it wasn't even funny. But I want to emphasize that that is a limited fund. Like, I'm not disparaging the fund, but you know, you might not get it unless you have a really strong sell on your program. We pitched ours as we wanted to be a net zero community league. We told a really good story around it, and I think we had a pretty good story. So that's what they're looking for, innovation, that sort of thing. So have a really good story. Don't count on the money. Just feel like it's Christmas if you get it. You know, the meat and potatoes are things like CLIP and CFEP and all the other programs. So I don't want you to be disappointed if you don't get it. And you might not get it. So I'm just helping Robin manage expectations here. But if you do get it, you'll feel like Santa visited, for sure. So we did that as our second project. We also applied to MCCAC for part of that. So we actually put in an embarrassingly small amount of money into the project as a community league because we raised most of the money. It was so easy, it wasn't even funny. So that was the second part of our project. So we now produce 96% of our electricity over the year. That's the calculation that Gordon did. So we're almost net zero, but story's not over. So we did the solar project, and I had slides on this. So there's my EcoCity slide. We did get money from EcoCity and MCCAC. We put in about 9% of the funding in that project from bingo money or whatever else. So we were able to raise all the rest of it. So I always tell community leagues, frankly, you're the easiest kind of organization there is to raise money to do this stuff because you have access to infrastructure money, to these creative, cool green funds. There is no other kind of organization where it's easier. There isn't. There just isn't. So if you're not doing this, it's kind of silly because it's going to pay your electricity bill for the next 25 years. And you know, I like to call that an investment in community. What better investment is there for a project like this that demonstrates resilience, sustainability, it makes you a cool community league. And by the way, it's going to pay your electricity bill for the next 30 years. And what are you going to do with all that spare money you have from your electricity bills? You're going to pay for better soccer programs, you know, really bad stuff like that. So it's a really good investment in community. And also it's a great thing to do at a community league because you're sharing with your community, your leadership and your sustainability projects and your energy efficiency and your solar programs. The community thinks it's really cool. People are calling us up all the time to hold events at our community league or to launch things or whatever. Ever since we've done the project, and we think that's kind of cool. So that's also led us to host these kinds of events. So this was the launch of Green Leagues, which Charlotte asked us if they could host at our community league, and then you can see the Minister of the Environment there and quite a crew of people. We get to do events like this all the time, which makes our community league pretty proud of the work we do. We also thanks to Gordon again, our solar supplier. He signed us up to be on the Eco Solar Home Tour, which is an annual tour of outstanding energy efficient homes and buildings once a year in Edmonton that's been going on for many, many years. We were one of the top sites on the Eco Solar Home Tour this year. Why? Because the first time we did this, we just invited people to come and look at our solar, and you know, a few people came and they said, wow, it's nice, it's solar, and then they left. And then we thought next year, well, let's make this we called it an we called it a family solar fun day because we wanted those keywords to define what we were doing and to attract people to the event. So we invited people who own electric cars. We had a show and shine for Teslas. We had probably 6 Teslas in the parking lot and probably a dozen or more electric vehicles. We had the Generate Energy guys that do audits out. They had a booth. We had Green Leagues out for a booth. We had our MLA was there with a booth. Robin's folks were there. And it was a great day. It was a really fun day. Lots of people came through all day. And, you know, we had blow-up things for the kids to bounce around in. And frankly, more people were interested in the electric cars than our solar system. So if you're trying to do an event like this, make sure you have some Teslas because people love them. So that's really kind of fun, and that's a new kind of event for the community that brings out a new kind of people to your community league. So it's kind of a new idea. It may help you attract new volunteers as well. So that's pretty cool. So energy efficiency 2, I don't know why I did it in this order, probably because I did it at the last minute, but this was part of the first project. So we put those LED heads on our rink, and that was, as I said, 400 watt heads replacing 1,000 watts. And honestly, the light is better. It's brighter and it's better than it was before. Then we also did the audit, urged by Charlotte and Robin to do the audit as part of the Green Leagues program. And I must say, this is one of the best audits I have ever seen. Like, the report we got from this was outstanding, and it was detailed down to every single idea. You can change your furnaces and you'll get this benefit and this payback. And it just made a list. So this is the list of our measures. And we decided we were able to reconfigure our funding for this project. We're going to do everything on the list. So there's nothing we're not going to do. And we're really excited about that, because now we're able to push our funding that we had raised even further. And we're going to get more out of this, which is really cool. So, and it was thanks to that audit. So we weren't going to replace our furnaces yet, but now we can do it. And it's going to make a really big difference, because we have probably 80% efficient furnaces. They're going to be 97% efficient. We're going to put in a fancy heat pump water heater that's super efficient. And the lights in our hall are circa whatever it was, 1964 or something like that. So they're all T12s and incandescents. We have heat lights, dimmable heat lights. It's amazing. We're like a cliche for an energy efficiency project. So it's going to make a huge difference, and it's also going to mean we're probably going to produce surplus electricity from our solar system by the time we're done. This is what our e-gauge system looks like. So as part of our solar project, really cool idea to consider putting an energy monitoring system in your hall as you're doing that. I think this was an extra $1,000 or something like that. But this is so helpful in diagnosing things, tracking your results. We have 3 different inverter systems, and so to look at our solar production, we have to look at 3 different web pages. And so this just brings it all together, all of our electricity use plus all of our solar energy production. So you can see a day's production there, and that's very typical. I'm looking at it, whatever time of the day I'm looking at it here. So that's the day at the end, and that's a typical pretty sunny day is like that. This is a day when, there's clouds on and off. And that's our night load. So the bottom line is our rink building, our all-season sports facility building. You can see the lighting and stuff that's in there. And then the rest of that is night lights. So our lighting is atrocious, and we're going to replace them. So when they come on at night, you can see that's a heck of a demand. Those big monster halide lights on the side of your hall can be pretty big energy users.
Where that's happening?
So that's all the red there. So that in that red will be your furnace motors and some other stuff that's happening at night, but mostly it's that night lighting outside that comes on, and you can see when it comes on at night. See, that's daytime load. So this is daytime load, regular stuff in the hall, and then you can see just before night starts, there's almost nothing happening, and then the lights come on, and they stay on all night. So this is our solar energy production. And this is energy consumption. So in the daytime, we're producing way more than we're using, and at night, we pull back from the grid. This is called e-gauge. Now, there's a number of energy monitoring systems you can use. I really like this one. This one's really common. It's pretty affordable. But there's others as well. I think there's something called Circuit Meter that is pretty sophisticated as well. I don't know what their software looks like, but we were talked into doing this by our solar guy, and as we were everything, but a really good idea.
And I've shown people at the overview your website, and you got this on
Yeah, you can't present it very well because I have to basically embed the web page, but yeah, it sort of works.
I'd really like to get something that's live.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I was shocked you couldn't do that with this. But there's no way to embed this live in your website. So I had to do an iframe, or I had to jimmy it to show it on my webpage. So maybe someday. And I'm just about done. So the other thing that we did as a consequence is I said we created a director of sustainability position, and I really advocate doing that. It's great for your own hall and for saving money in your operations. It's great as an outward-facing thing to do with your community to attract new people and new interest and new kinds of events to your community. It's just great for the community league. It's just another different area that you can draw people's attention from, and it's one that's on people's minds right now. So it's kind of fun. I actually enjoy staying there as a volunteer, and I probably wouldn't be there because I'd be moving on to something else. And so I'm doing something I enjoy as a volunteer.
Do you have a facilities director?
We do, and we have a really good facilities director.
So he works really closely with you?
Yes. Yeah, we have to work really closely together, and if we didn't, that would be a problem. But he does all the stuff. Like he makes sure everything works, and that's really essential.
Nice.
Your facilities guy is always
So
essential.
did you have to reach out to him, or how did that?
No, he's been there for a long time, and he, he'd been doing it for a long time. This was like a whole refresh for his job. He's loving this stuff, absolutely loving this stuff. He was kind of getting, getting tedious. He's been doing it for a long time, and now he's just jazzed about his volunteer position again.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Is this embedded in your bylaws as a director of sustainability?
No. I'm probably technically a director at large or something. Ways and Means, something we've never had for 20 years and it's still in our bylaws. It doesn't matter. You can call a director whatever you want, as long as you're appointed legitimately and elected. We should put it in, but it's not.
Do you have a vote at the
Oh yeah, I'm a full director of the society. Yeah. So my message is, I know there's steps, and I know the CLIP process is cumbersome, and so is CFEP sometimes, and that's just the way the world turns. Figure it out, get through it. You've got resources like no other organization there is. You've got Charlotte you can call on, you've got Robin, you've got mentors in the community like Rocky. People are happy to give you advice. So really, you couldn't be in a better situation for considering these projects, and you can raise most of the money pretty easily as long as you're patient and you have reasonable expectations. The biggest problem I see sometimes with community projects is people get these $2 million ambitions, and really they should have sat down when they started and realized they had $400,000 worth of fundraising capacity. And so 2 years down the road or 4 years down the road, they're at $300,000 and they're going, this is impossible. And yeah, it probably is. And that's nothing will kill a volunteer more than that. Have a plan from the beginning and know how you're going to raise your money. If you're going to raise the other $3 million by selling popcorn, then do the math and figure out how many bags of popcorn you need to sell. And, is that going to take you till 2064? Be reasonable, have an achievable plan. Nothing is better for volunteers in the community than an achievable plan where they get to win. Because losing is no fun. No fun. I've seen it. I've seen people come in with really high ambitions, and then it just becomes no fun. This is really fun. And, I was supposed to do one more thing. So at Energy Efficiency Alberta, we have the retail no-cost energy savings program, which I think one of you was talking about. I'm not going to go into that here. We also have our retail products program, which is rebates on light bulbs and washing machines and all that good stuff, and that's at energyefficiency.ca. I just want to tell a little story. This is our free program where we have people come out to your home and, why is it doing that? And install light bulbs and all the things you see in this list. And then some of the businesses in the beginning, when we launched this program, were saying, oh my God, you're going to kill the industry, you're going to give away the light bulbs we should be selling, and all kinds of stories like that. And we assured them that we had used really qualified people in designing these programs, and that this was the perfect opening program to get people excited about energy efficiency in a place where they hadn't done a lot of energy efficiency over the years. And guess how it turned out? So when we launched our retail products program, where we're actually giving incentives for you to buy light bulbs, remember in the first program we're giving them away, we moved, I think it was 4 million light bulbs. The Canadian Tires of the world are delirious. So that's why in our second campaign, if you walk in their front doors right now, right at the front doors, there's a giant pallet of LED light bulbs. Costco was pretty happy with it. Home Depot. The people that know this stuff better are even more happy about it, because what happens is you go in there and you buy your $1 light bulb at Canadian Tire, and this happened to me just the other day, and I bought a $60 set of Christmas lights while I was there. So I have a feeling that's exactly their grand scheme, but hey, I was a case study for them, I guess. I was there to see their display. I wanted to oogle it. So I did buy a few light bulbs, and then I bought some other stuff while I was there, and that's probably the typical consumer experience. So what's happened is we've generated a lot of interest in energy efficiency products and energy efficiency projects, and the numbers are starting to come in. And the categories, in almost every category, we've overachieved in terms of how many things we've moved. And all of these are great return for us because we have minimal investment. We take a little bit of your carbon levy money and incent you with it, and you guys spend a whack of money doing really smart things that are going to save you money. It's just kind of a win-win situation. So the one I am going to talk about briefly, and hopefully Charlotte will help me with, I haven't had to talk about this because I don't talk to a lot of groups that actually use this program, but this is our business, nonprofit, and institutional energy savings program, the BNI program. The reason I haven't had to talk about it is because people in organizations like this usually went to MARC at MCCAC until they ran out of money in their TAME program, which I love, by the way. I think that is the model program, and it's because of the assistance and advice they provide you that makes it really, really awesome. Like, I've interacted with them from our league, and it's the easiest place in the world to do stuff with. It's amazing. It's a model. So this is our program, and it's more like our standard rebate program for consumers. You will fill out forms, you'll qualify or you won't qualify. You can pre-qualify if you fill out the forms and send them to us. And this is for systems in institutions like community leagues would qualify here. You could do this or MCCAC, but you couldn't do both. Since they don't have money, it doesn't matter at the moment. They may be back, I suspect they will. But for now, you can go to this. And this applies, unlike consumers, you can do heating systems. So in our consumer programs, you can't do furnaces. You can do hot water heaters, but not furnaces. The reason we don't do furnaces for consumers is very simple. The guys that crunched the data for us said you don't have to, because you're going to make the right decision. When you need to replace your furnace, you're going to replace it with a 95 or a 97% efficient furnace, regardless of what we do. So why would we spend money trying to incent you to do something you're already going to do? And that's what the data told us, so that's why we don't do it. I sometimes have to explain that because I sometimes take some heat over that one. No pun intended. So in this program for nonprofits, heating, water, and air is a really big component for most organizations, and in our hall is no exception. We have cinder block walls. The heat leaks out of there like a sieve. And when we replace our 80% efficient furnaces with 97% efficient furnaces, that is a huge gain because we use a lot of energy to heat the hall. So heating systems qualify, hot water systems, and some lighting as well. And lighting is the other big thing in institutions like this. You know, like our hall is full of lights, and it's just going to make a big difference. So this is a very simple program. I don't know if I missed anything, Charlotte, that you would know about it.
So basically, all you really have to do to apply, it's like David said, it's a rebate program. So you buy the product, you install it, you keep the receipt, and you use that information to apply for the rebate. If that makes you nervous based on the quantity or whatever, you can pre-apply. So you can send in, say this is how much it's probably going to cost, these are the numbers, and this is when it's going to be done, and then they will set aside that certain amount of money for a certain amount of time, in order so that when you are done, you have that money available. So for the bigger projects, I would definitely recommend pre-applying for some funding, so they put aside money for you. But for smaller things, like if you're just redoing one furnace or just doing the lighting in your building, then you can definitely buy the things first and then provide that information. And the application is simple. It's just online through the website. And you just fill in, basic information from the bill. You do need the specs of anything that you buy.
Which should be on the quotes. If you secure quotes, you'll have those anyways. So.
Yes.
And Energy Efficiency Alberta has been doing lots of outreach with the contractors that actually do this work. They've been having tons and tons of info sessions. So most of the people who actually would be installing this for you are already aware of the programs, and they can also help you apply to, much like the same thing we were saying with solar installers. They're pretty aware of the programs that are out there, so they can help you with
and they know which models of which things, and some of them even advertise this on their website. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty easy.
Yeah, so again, don't get scared by the fact that you're like, well, this is really technical information. When you hire a contractor and you're hiring them with information based on your energy audit already, and your energy audit has already recommended some of the things that you should upgrade to. So again, that person can help you pull all this information together to make it easier for you too.
Yeah, I did a water heater in my own home, and I applied to our own program. And it's funny because the contractor submitted the forms. All I had to do was sign them. So it was really painless. So that's just a slide about the benefits of energy efficiency. I'll just pass over that because I've taken a lot of time. This is your community league when you're having a fun event after you've done these projects. That is a Tesla Model S owned by a guy who I didn't even know was in our neighborhood, who is more than happy to come out and show his car off for the day at the community league. And you can see the lineup of cars there. We had probably 6 Teslas there throughout the day. We had a Chevy Volt, we had a Cadillac hybrid, we had a number of Leafs, probably 3 Leafs. and some other quirky cars. I don't know if you've ever seen the Tesla X, Model X. So this is the S. This is the sedan that beats every other car on the road now, even in the quarter mile. But there's a Model X that has doors that open like this. And you know how...
So all the little kids were just like mesmerized.
So you know how computers have...
Used to have one in the 50s like that. That's just a dream car.
You know how computers have those demo modes, where you're in the store and they're showing off all their fancy stuff? Well, Model X has that, and you can access it from your key fob, and it does a dance. It actually dances, and its lights go in time, and it plays loud music. It's like a sound and action show. It's just hilarious to watch. It's hilarious to watch people's reaction too. So anyways, that's your community league after you do all these exciting things.
Cool.
Yeah. Is there any questions for David?
No, thank you.
I have two.
Yeah.
So first question is, have you seen any influence by the community league to your community? Do they do any efficiency like solar panel installation or anything like that? Because the league is actively doing all those energy efficiency stuff.
We can't prove it, but we do stories in our newsletter all the time. We have events all the time. So I'm pretty sure that's the case. And where I can verify it is just about every single community league within miles of us has either explored this, got quotes for solar, or thought about doing this. So it does have an effect on people and on other organizations in your community, definitely. In fact, we've answered a lot of questions to a lot of community leagues who are curious about how we do it.
Another reason to start Green Leagues is so that David didn't have to give a presentation a week to a community.
It's true. I've been to all the area councils and many of the leagues just to do presentations. So they love the idea.
So you have another question.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a second question.
Which league are you from, by the way?
Rossdale. Rossdale. Okay. So second question is the Director of Sustainability. It's a pretty cool title, but since you've already finished the solar panel project, are you contemplating any big project?
Thank you.
I hope this is all for a while, personally, because this is about the third or fourth project I've done in the last 5 years. But the winter sports facility, that's another story. And that is a really cool project. So we had 2 ATCO trailers at one time beside each other, and they were so old and so bad, people wouldn't even go in the washrooms. They were just beaters, those old, typical skate shack at a community league. And so we got this idea that we wouldn't just replace it with a skate shack, that we would build a building with a nice high roof, and we got some quotes, and we found out we could do this for about $450,000. Which is pretty reasonable, and it's pretty easy to raise that amount of money. So we turned it, honestly, when we call it a winter sports facility instead of a skate shack, that we mean that, because before we used to use it only as a skate shack. Now it's an all-season facility. We have a meeting room in there. We have a free skate rental shop in there. We have storage for our soccer program. We have kids programs that happen in the space in the season that's not skating. Whereas in the old days, we would use it for 2 months of the year as a skate shack. And so now it's like a second facility. So we don't rent out our hall for meetings. We don't have to occupy the big space. We can use that big space for bigger events. And we hold our own meetings in the skate shack now. So it's been a very cool thing for the community. Plus, it's a nice little place to go work. So our volunteers can go in there. We have an office with a computer and a boardroom with nice high windows. So it's bright in there, and it's a pleasant place to hang out, which is great for volunteers, instead of sending them back to the dungeon in the corner of your community league. So when I say it's more than when we call it a winter sports facility, we're still grappling with, it's like a second hall. If you were a community league, and I've advised leagues of this, and people are afraid to start new community leagues because they're afraid they're going to have to enter into a project to build a hall. And if they do that, they're going to be taking on a $2 to $4 million project, and how are you going to raise that money? Well, that scares a lot of volunteers away. I've seen it 1,000 times, and it prevents new community leagues from getting started. Well, what if your vision is to build this facility, this little A-frame facility that acts as a hall, a program space, a skate facility, and all of those things with one grant cycle? Because $450,000, remember, you can get up to 400 in a CLIP project. So in your first grant cycle, you could match CFEP with CLIP, and you're there. And you have a facility. You don't have to kill yourself for the next 5 years. Build a hall someday if you want. You know, start a long-term project to build a major facility. But when you have this facility in your new neighborhood, you can make an informal skating rink and then build a skating rink. You're in business, like literally in the first couple of years of establishing a community league, and it was painless because raising $2 million, you know, you've all probably tried to raise money. It's really no fun when the going's hard. It's really no fun. So.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah. So my other question's kind of supplementary to that. How aware are you of residents in that Evansdale catchment area picking up on energy efficiency things for their own homes? Have you seen any uptake?
I have no evidence at all, except, you know, people ask me about it, but I have no tangible evidence. I suspect it's happening, and I was making the extrapolation that because community leagues are doing it and have asked us about it, and we have a connection, I'm saying there's a connection there. Whether, I wouldn't be surprised, but I have no evidence of that.
What are the interesting...
Sorry. I was just to say the Riverdale experience on that one is that it helps to put actual sort of neighbor-to-neighbor pressure on. Like we did some advertising of the no cost, low cost, and then, you know, we put it out amongst the sustainability team, and there's 12 of us, so, you know, we pressured each other, and then we put it in our newsletter and we posted it on our Facebook page. And the guy who came said that our community had like maybe 4 times the uptake as other. I mean, maybe he says that to everyone, but it seemed that we did quite well. So, and then the other thing is just to keep hammering and, you know, even tag friends in the community and stuff, people that you know are maybe just right on the precipice and kind of, you know, pre-contemplative to sort of push them over the edge, seems to be working in Riverdale a little bit, maybe.
But you know, we have events with politicians at them, with business people, with all kinds of different members of the community. So we're engaging in conversations about this stuff all the time. And we're exposing these people to these ideas and our rationale for it all the time. So it is a big education process. We do a fair number of articles on this stuff. So it undoubtedly influences the surrounding communities.
I think that's one way that the Green Leagues program can start, that each league can start helping each other league. Like if you have done a good article or something, you know, that we can share these things and then just sort of locally brand them. I know when Charlotte's working on a video series that each league will be able to co-brand sort of, so that it has, because I do think that sort of neighbor-to-neighbor appeal and the really local branding, like this is what your neighbors are doing, actually does have a bit of cachet. And I don't know, that's something I hope that, like what you're doing with all the energy, I just, you know, it's just we're all doing amazing things, and I think if we can form a sort of network and share, and I don't know, that's sort of my dream, is that, you know, we'd even turn this 101 session into adding a session where all the leagues are sort of, you know, sharing some best practices and stuff.
So, you know, look at it this way. That's our MLA standing beside Charlie, the car owner, and he was just tickled to be involved in this. And I'll tell you, you know, he thinks our reputation, he thinks we're cool. And when he thinks we're cool, we get letters to support fundraising faster than ever.
Good point.